Good morning, everyone. We're going to start in about 2 minutes, but I at least wanted to turn on the audio so we could talk. If you have any questions, the GoToWebinar menu thing has a question spot in there. Feel free to type them in anytime. I expect that we're going to have questions because the banks have questions even. So we will get this going in a couple of minutes, but I'm glad you're all here. And I look forward to a great webinar. By the way, your questions don't have to be related exactly to the webinar. If there are other trucking and payroll or trucking and finance things, if I can answer it for you, I will. We're here to help trucking companies and their families, so it can be about something else too. We've got about 1 minute before we're going to start. If any of the new people in the room have any questions at any point about the webinar and the subject or anything tangentially related to it as it relates to trucking and their employees, feel free to use the question box in the GoToMeeting control panel or whatever you want to call it. We're going to answer as many questions as we can during the webinar. And if we don't get to your question, then we'll email you an answer if it's something that we can help you with. We've been getting a lot of amazing, awesome questions in the last couple of webinars about the PPP program and about the CARES Act and about FFCRA. So it's great that everybody's engaged and trying to figure out how to best run their trucking companies. And these are the kinds of people that we like to work with. We like to work with people that want to make their company better and want to work for a great place. And so we're supportive of that as well. So yeah, about 30 seconds and we're going to start. I feel like I should count down the Jeopardy theme or something. All right, it's time to get this show on the road here. Oh, someone else is coming in, but they'll catch up to us. Thank you for coming to today's webinar. It's about trucking and the PPP Flexibility Act, which is a new law that just came in. So let's get the truck going here. A little bit of housekeeping. You have a screen, something like the one that's displayed with a control panel. There's a spot on there for questions. Please put your questions in there at any time. We'll answer them as we can. And like I said, if we can't get to them during the webinar, we'll follow up with you afterwards. They're usually great questions, and they're usually questions that would benefit everybody. So we'll often send them to everybody that shows up to, or that is, registers or attends the webinar, but we'll keep the names out of it. You can slide the webinar, go to webinar window closed by clicking the double arrow, and do not click that black X. That will kick you out of the webinar. Normally, Brandon, our sales manager, rolls through these parts, but as part of work from home and then part of road construction, He's got some internet difficulties. Sounds like they cut through his line, so he'd normally do this part. I'm just going to handle it for us. If his internet comes back up, then I'm sure he'll jump in. But a little bit about us at Superior Trucking Payroll Service. We are the payroll service for trucking companies. We understand everything that trucking companies need. We know you can read all this, but we know what a lumper is. We know what needing to wait for somebody's bills. We know what that means. We know that tolls and scales. We know that most drivers get advances, things like that. So we're full service, but that's what we do. So you don't have to teach us about trucking, I guess is what I'm saying, which you have to do with a lot of other places. A little bit about me. I'm the founder of Superior Trucking Payroll Service. I've been doing payroll for over 20 years. I spent 10 plus years working for a trucking company where I was the CFO. And I'm in a bunch of trucking and payroll associations, but that's what it is. And a few quick notes. I put this in all of our webinars when I'm talking about law changes and about now with all the COVID-19 hubbub. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a banker. I'm not a lender. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not any of these things. I'm a administrator who is trying to make sense of the laws as they come out, and I understand trucking, so I'm trying to make it applicable to you, but don't sue me, I guess is what I'm saying. We're focusing on the law. We're not worried about the politics. I'm sure there's a million other webinars you can watch that would get into the politics. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're here to help trucking families. That's why our company's here. And by trucking families, we mean the families of the owners, we mean the families of the people in the office, the families of the drivers. It's a lot of families. And so that's why we do these webinars, is to help trucking companies and their families, everybody be more successful, because it's hard, even without crazy things like a pandemic. And then I have this snippet from my bank, one of my banks that I use. And the point of this is that the SBA has not been great in getting out guidance to the lenders. So even the things that we're talking about, if you ask your bank, some of these questions, they'll say, we're not sure, because they're waiting for SBA guidance and they're not getting it yet. They weren't getting it before, and now they've changed the law again. So this, just a little thing where the banks are doing their best to keep up with us, but they've got to wait for their own guidance as well. On to the things for today's webinar. We're going to talk about HR 7010, the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act of 2020. I've included a link to, if you want to read it. They put it on, that link goes to nice looking, makes it almost look like the Constitution with a parchment paper or something, but it's from Congress, so okay. We're going to talk about what are the law changes. We're going to talk about how these changes can affect your trucking company. We're going to go through what other things do I need to do to get the loan forgiven, which is, getting the loan is awesome. Getting it forgiven is really the goal. What else I should do to get ready, and then Q&A. I'm trying to leave more time in this webinar for questions and answers because we've been getting so many questions during the webinar that I don't feel like I get to nearly enough questions. So trying to leave a little time for that this time. And again, if not, we'll get to them later and we'll send them out to everybody. Here's some PPP loan forgiveness basics, of what I like to call them. A couple of links. There's the forgiveness application that we went through in the last webinar. I expect this to get changed because some of the math got changed. But if you want to get a flavor for kind of what the SBA is going to be looking for, there's a great link for you right there. And then the PPP loans and info and definitions. This one's pretty helpful because they get into what is transportation utility, which is one of the things. They talk about transportation utility, and there's other places where they define it, but at least you get an idea of what exactly they mean. What is payroll? What is not? That kind of thing. So what are the law changes? This is the law that was signed. It went through Congress, went to the House, I think, last Monday, and the Senate on Thursday, and then signed by the President on Friday, I believe. You can check my days on that, but I'm in the right idea. So it was signed by the President, so it becomes law. Originally, you only got 8 weeks worth of payroll could be forgiven. They've now will give you either an 8-week option or a 24-week option. Why anybody would pick 8 weeks, I'm not quite sure, but 24 weeks worth of payroll forgiveness. The payroll cost percentage had to be 75% originally. So whatever your eligible payroll for forgiveness was, you could only have a third more to make your 100% of what that number was. And now it's only 60% required. So you can have a lot more non-payroll expenses in there. The FTE restoration, that's my term for it. Part of this to get your whole loan forgiven is you got to be employing as many people as you did during the look back period, which is generally early this year. They've moved that out. They're giving you 6 more months. Repayment of the loans that are funded after June 5 can be stretched over 5 years for any part that's not forgiven. So if you can't get part of your loan forgiven, you get extra time to pay it back at 1% a year. So that's the loan you want to pay back last. And now this is another nice one too, deferral of employer FICA, that's Social Security and Medicare, the employer share of it. You can defer that over 2 years, even though you have a PPP loan. And originally you could not. Originally, if you took the PPP loan, you could not defer employer share of Social Security and Medicare. So those are the highlights of the changes. Now let's talk about how these changes can affect your trucking company, because this is really where it matters. And I've listed the same things I had on the previous slide, but 24 weeks of forgiveness, if you can't, I mean, I know trucking is tough right now, and I know that some of you aren't having all of your drivers work, but man, you get 24 weeks of payroll now to cover this instead of, and you basically were lent on 10 weeks originally. So even if you're running half right now, you'll get your whole loan forgiven right there. But if you don't, that's the next thing. The payroll cost percentage minimum will move down from 75% to 60%. So now 40% of your loan basically can be truck payments. They have defined they've defined rent on real and personal property, which if you have trailer rent or you're renting a truck from Ryder or somebody or Trailer Express or whoever, you can deduct that. If you have a mortgage, real or personal property, again, real property is land. So I would assert that is eligible. Or your truck loan is eligible. Your trailer loan's eligible. So there's no real way you shouldn't be able to get this whole loan forgiven. Is kind of what I'm saying. If there's got to be some other compelling reason, like you shut down your trucking company in March and are just kind of bringing back a shell of it, that'd be like really the only reason. Especially with the next one, the FTE restoration. Before you either had to have the same number of FTEs, and FTEs are full-time equivalents. It's kind of a way to count people in an organization. So if you had somebody that worked 20 hours a week, they'd count as half of an FTE because they work on a 40-hour week. And what I said in the last webinar, I think still applies, that when I'm counting FTEs for drivers, if the driver worked that week, they count as a full FTE because most drivers work more than 40 weeks or 40 hours a week, I'm sorry. But now you've got till December 31 to get your staff back up to where it was supposed to be. That's amazing. If we can't get you, and I think 75% of original staff is still the goal number to get your loan forgiven. If we can't get 75% of trucks running again by the end of the year, we're not going to have any stuff. So, or we're going to have the stuff that's made right here because no one can move it. So I'm confident that by the end of the year, we're going to have trucks moving again in the way that they were before, because just the pent-up demand, things are going to wear out. People are going to want new stuff. The repayment of the loan about the 5 years, that's really only for loans that were funded June 5 and later. But you shouldn't need to repay back any of your loan unless you have a very extenuating circumstance. So that's, but still it's nice at 1% for 5 years. If you can't get it forgiven for some reason, you still get a really low interest loan. I would be paying back everything else before I'd pay that back. And then the deferral of the employer FICA, that's something that we can start doing now. Employer FICA is 7.65% of the first about 135 grand in wages. If you've got $200,000 in wage and payroll, that's about $1,500 a week that you can defer and pay it at the end of 2021, and half of it at the end of 2021 and half of it at the end of 2022. It's kind of a slippery slope, so I would be careful about it, because you're going to have to pay that money back, and if you don't, they're going to back penalize you and interest you back to the day it was due originally. And I know that trucking is often hard with cash flow. I get it. But if you're going to do this, you've got to be keeping good books, and you've got to make sure you make those payments, because that's going to fall apart on you very easily. If you're one of our clients, we can help you manage it and tell you exactly what your balance is or whatever. But you got to make sure, even if you're using somebody else or doing it in house or whatever, just make sure that if you do this, you're doing it right and you're keeping track of it. There's also rules too, for example, just to let people know, if you're one of our clients or another payroll service, if we collect the money from you, we've got to send it in. We're never going to hold it for you for the 2 years. Like, you wanted to pay it right away and we tell you to defer it. That's not okay. So we're not doing it. I'm sure most other ones aren't too. I'm sure I would be surprised if anybody ends up doing that. That's pretty shady. But you never know, right? Crazier things that happen. And I can see there's a bunch of questions coming in already. I can't read them all right now, but it's awesome that you're sending them in. Keep sending them in. We're all going to educate each other. That's the goal here. How do I get my loan forgiven? I left out fill out the form. Uh, there's going to be a new form coming out. So that, obviously the bank is going to require some paperwork from you. But the main thing is have payroll, pay your people. Hopefully you're paying them to work, but even if you're paying them not to work, it keeps them off your unemployment roll, so you don't have any issues there, depending on the state that you're in. Some states are allowing some grace for this and some aren't. But just keep paying your people. That's the main thing. Get your employee count to where it was at the beginning of the year, basically. And I'm rounding off dates. It's not meant to be the exact. February 15 is often the cut date. But just be back to full strength by December 31st, which hopefully you will be. And again, in trucking, I expect that we will be. And then when I say keep track of your progress, you should know what your loan is, and you should know how much of what you do every time is eligible for forgiveness. A lot of lenders are suggesting opening a separate account. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a little tricky because not all of your payroll expense is eligible for PPP loan forgiveness. The employer Social Security and Medicare portion is not eligible. Federal unemployment is not eligible. So even if you have all of your payroll come out of one bank account, it's not going to be completely right. So you want to keep track of that. We can help you with reports if you need them for people that use us. But you should be able to know this. And this last one's really important. I just had a good conversation with a bank this morning. I was able to go into the branch for the first time in 3 months and talk to the branch manager, and he's been writing a ton of PPP loans like they all have. And he was telling me stories about people that would call him just amazed that he didn't know the exact way that their loan was going to get forgiven, because the law got signed last Friday. You should know by like Tuesday morning, exactly what's going to happen. And so what I'm trying to say here is your lender may not know right now how you're going to get your loan forgiven, but I imagine you're going to catch more flies with honey on this. So allow them some grace. Just it's okay. They're not going to know yet, but they're also not asking you for the money yet. So don't give them a few months. They'll get to it. And they want your loan to get forgiven too. They already made their money on it. They don't care, really. I mean, they're on your side because they're probably your lender for something else, any truck payments and things like that too. They want to see you succeed. So just give them some time, and if they're not ready, they're not ready. I'm sure that once your lender has a plan in place and there's not another law coming down, which we'll talk about that in a minute if there is or whatever, once they get a path on how to forgive loans, that they want to do it. So yeah, just don't try to be nice to your lender, I guess is what I'm saying. What else should I do to get ready? I would say right now is the time. If you need to add back drivers are out there now in a way that they weren't 2 years ago. Remember a long time ago, 2 years ago, when rates were great, and the whole issue was how do I recruit drivers? And drivers were getting raises from some people for a first time in a while. I'm not speaking to anybody specifically there, but driver pay went up significantly in 2018 as an industry. If we get a big surge, which is possible, and some people predict we will, some people predict we won't, you might need to, this is the time. Those drivers might be willing to go right now. especially if you can pay them with money from a loan you're going to get forgiven. This is the time to improve and add to your driver roster. This is the time to, if you've got some underperforming drivers that you can replace, but you kept them because you just couldn't find other drivers, right now you should be able to find other drivers. And so that's, I mean, I think that's one of the single biggest things you can do to make your trucking company run better, really, is if you can have less headaches and drivers that just do their business, or the kind of driver that you want that wants to do the things you want, obviously, everybody's blood pressure drops in the whole company. The next thing is take this time has been a little slower. We're not moving the loads that we were moving. And I know it's still hard, but this is the time that you can look at things and look at processes in your organization. Look at how you do anything and could we do it better? Again, there's often, yes, we can do it better, but is the change worth it? Because we got to redo this and this and this, yeah, to make whatever happen. Like if you were looking, I'm going to use the example of changing fuel card vendors just as an example. If there was a better fuel card vendor for you and you just didn't want to mess with changing it because you got to swap out all the cards and you got to fill out these forms and all this, but it's a better discount or it's better terms or something like that, this is the time to do it. This is the, you know, this, you're not going to get another chance like this for a while, hopefully. So I would suggest, looking at those things, and if there's things you've always wanted to do, we've had clients that have come to us that have been wanting to send their payroll, move their payroll to us for a while and just never did it. And now they're finally like, we have the time to do it. And so that's what made me think of it. And I think of it in our own organization here. There's things that we want to do, and this is the time we can do it. So yeah, this is your chance to really get to change everything up. Pay off non-qualifying debt. What I mean by non-qualifying debt is some of the debt applies to forgiveness, and that's where the qualifying part is. Any loans after, I think it's February 15, don't qualify. Pay those, if you've got extra cash from the loan forgiveness and things, I would use it to pay off that debt. I wouldn't pay off the debt on the loans where I can get forgiven, because that's going to reduce your forgiveness amount if you need it. And again, hopefully you won't need that much for your forgiveness amount, but this might be the time to retire some debt as well. And that would be nice. You can always reborrow that money on new equipment or on new something else later. Here's some things, we're still in crazy times. I'm tired of seeing unprecedented times, but I see that in every advertising everywhere, but it's still just a crazy time. Here's some things that I would do. I would encourage direct deposit. That way you're not having people touching checks and touching money as much cleaner. It also just eliminates the headaches of lost checks and things like that. It's a good idea, even regardless, or even forgetting about the current situation, but this is the time, again, you can really impact change on your company right now because everybody's looking at everything. And I just remind you again that trucking always steps up, and that's what's been happening. We all still have food, we still all have what we need. So that's thanks to you guys, and I'm sure you're gonna step up again as it comes up again. I'm like, be ready to go back to remote work. A lot of you probably had your dispatchers working from home or your office people working from home. There may or may not be a second wave. Again, I'm not an epidemiologist. Some people say there will be, some people say there won't. Time will tell. My job, that's not my area to tell you that for sure is going to happen. But if you were looking at anything and you were like, boy, if this ever happened to happen again, I'd want to make sure everybody had laptops, or I'd want to make sure that we had a better VPN for people to remote in, or we had a better way to communicate, or we had to change our phone system or whatever. I'd be doing that, because it's a non-zero chance of a second wave is what I'm saying. It's not 100%, but it's not 0% either. So I would be thinking about that. Hey, what could we do to do this even better next time? So just something to consider there. And then I still say rates are going to go up. I'm hearing they're starting to creep up a little bit. You guys know that better than I do. I just hear from people like you guys that are listening about rates. But I think that as things have opened up, I know I've seen the automakers are, I think, starting to move some product. I've seen some of our clients that haul for that, and they're starting to bring back a lot of their people. So, rates should go up. So hopefully we can make some money here between that and the PPP. Hopefully we can get through all this stuff, and I think that we can. Here's some useful links. The first one is just the coronavirus page. I've got some links up there for you. If anybody has any links they will think I should put up there that would be helpful to anybody, let me know. I'll drop them right on there for you. The IRS has a similar page. The IRS's page is nice. They update it all the time. And then I've got this one with this PPP loan, this truckingpayroll.com/PPP loan. That is a sample form for the payroll forgiveness form to get your loan forgiven. It's the old form because they haven't come out with a new one yet. When they come out with a new one, I'm going to replace it, and we'll email you guys all and let you know, hey, there's a new PPP loan forgiveness sample waiting for you, so you can see it. We went through it in the last webinar, but it's kind of hard to follow unless you can see the whole thing, and I'm limited to what I can show you on the screen. So that'll be there. Again, it's not updated now. It's still the same one that I put up a couple of weeks ago, but we're going to get it updated. And then there's the SBA page. You'll be able to find the form there through a couple clicks. And I think I referred to it early in the webinar too, where when they come out with a new form, it'll be there. And they also have a good FAQ section that they add to a lot that's been pretty helpful to have in there. But again, if there's any other links anybody thinks I can put up on my website in particular, on our company website, I'm happy to do it because we want to help you. We want to help everybody. We're all kind of in it together, which I think is another phrase that we've been hearing too much, but it is true. Let's see what we can do. Okay, I tried to leave a little more time for questions. Give me just a minute here while I try, and I have to scroll through them. And it's a very small window for some reason. What is this? To unlock pane from control panel. There we go. Now I can read them a little better. Okay, you might even be able to see them. I'm going to move them out. Okay. Let's see here, and I'm reading these kind of as they are. I will leave out names if there's somebody's name or something. Has anyone seen a specific response as to whether fuel for trucks is considered transportation under the utilities section? They define it as fuel for business vehicles. I have seen it, I think they call it transportation utilities is the phrase that the SBA uses. From what I have seen, and it's not from the SBA, but it's from other people, transportation utilities are not fuel for the truck, unfortunately. Because man, we'd all max out, you guys would all max out your 40% right there. Transportation utilities is something in other parts of the country. I think it's might be in the Northeast, where they charge you something for bringing the electricity to you, which I thought was always just baked into the rate. But it's not generally considered, like fuel's not part of that, as where I've seen it. And you say they define it as fuel for business vehicles. If you can send me a link to that, I'd love to make fuel deductible. And I will tell you too, whenever we're talking about deductibility or forgiveness ability, I guess is really what we're talking about, of anything, what your bank or your lender says trumps anything that I say. So if I tell you you can't deduct fuel as transportation utility and your bank says you can, then go with your bank. That's what matters. But if I say you can deduct it and they say you can't, your bank wins. They're the ones who are forgiving the loan. So with that in mind, I don't see it as being deductible, but I would love to get the link from you if I can. Let's see, does the extension to December 31 of loan forgiveness mean that you have 26 some weeks to pay payroll, or do you have to pick the 8 weeks or your 8-week average? No, it's 24 weeks, and I think that's just 26 weeks. I get where you're going, but it's 24 weeks. I think it's just a total of the 24 weeks. That it's not an average or anything, which is why I'm convinced that everybody should be able to get their loan forgiven, even without the fuel thing that we just talked about in the last question. Let's see. Are you saying that we can get up to 24 weeks of payroll loaned to us and forgiven? No, the loan's still only 10 weeks of payroll at this point. But you bring me to another good point. I have heard rumors, and these are totally rumors, that's not from, I just hear them, that there's a possibility that there will be a second round of PPP loans, even for people that got an original PPP loan. But it would only be for companies under 100 employees. It's not law. I don't even think it's in committee yet, but that's just the scuttlebutt I've been hearing. And, it's a rumor, so don't, plan your life around it. But yeah, no, it's still only, the loan is generally only for 2.5 months of payroll. So you're not going to get 24 weeks worth of payroll, unfortunately. So would trailer and truck leasing be considered rentals? Yes. The way that I read it, that's rental of personal property. And so I would submit to you I would submit those amounts for forgiveness. And again, your bank may tell you no, but I think they're going to tell you yes. Again, they're waiting for SBA guidance. Do you know if we can ask for an increase in the PPP loan to cover more payroll? I only borrowed enough for 8 weeks of it, for 8 weeks worth. No, you can't apply for a loan for another PPP loan yet if you already got one. You get one shot at that and you're done. So any of you who have not applied, you need to go apply because they have to close the loan by June 30th. So you need to go apply now, even if you're one truck. You might get $3,000. It's still $3,000 you have to pay back. And if that doesn't mean much to you, then just send it to me. So yeah, so go apply, get it going. So yeah, unfortunately, you can't ask for another one. If they do the second PPP loan plan, like a whole separate thing in the late summer or fall, then you could, but it would be just for a new period. Let's see, regarding forgiveness, do you have to wait until the end of the 24 weeks or can you apply for forgiveness once you reach the fully forgiveness amount? So he's basically asking, if I get my loan, if I max out my loan after 13 weeks, can I apply for forgiveness then? It's goofy. The way the SBA looks right now is it's either 8 weeks or 24 weeks, which is dumb. I know. I agree. I'm with you guys. I'm sure that I think that, but that's the way it reads right now. We're waiting for more guidance on that. But if I had to answer right now, I'd say you got to wait for the full 24 weeks. But you're not accruing interest anyway. It's just got to put it later in your calendar and you'll get there. What if you already got the loan on the first round, only got 8 weeks, but you really need that 24 weeks? Can we apply for the difference? No, not yet. Once you got no one's getting 24 weeks worth of loans. So they just the look back period for paying for the forgiveness is up to 24 weeks. You are not, no, you cannot apply for the difference. If they do another PPP program that's completely separate from this, you may be able to apply for a different amount. But again, I just heard there's a rumor of it, not even any specifics other than it's 100 employees and less. There is a thing called through the SBA called an EIDL, Economic Impact Disaster Loan. Look into that. That might be something that works for you as well. Let's see here. Yeah, a lot of these questions are similar, which is awesome. But yeah, now the timeline has been extended. Is it possible to get additional funding on the current loan? Unfortunately, no. We need to wait for another loan. Does transportation cost under the cost for loan forgiveness include cost of operating trucks like fuel? Very similar to the other question we had that would go under utility. Transportation costs, yeah, when they talk about transportation, they're not talking about trucking ever, unfortunately. They're talking about transportation if they talk about transportation, they're talking about fuel for cars. They're talking about maintenance for cars. Transportation is what you do. So for you, these things are almost like cost of goods sold in an accounting sense, for those of you who are familiar with that kind of stuff. So they're not generally going to include that. But again, if you can get it included by your lender, go for it. I think that's awesome. What date should we use for FTE prior to the loan? I want to double check that. I think it's February 15 or average of last year. I'll try and find that for you. Is the federal payroll tax eligible for forgiveness? No, it's specifically prohibited. Wage, retirement for non-owners, state and local payroll tax, like your state unemployment paid by the employer, would be eligible. The payroll tax is not. Let's see here. Oh, I just got a couple more pop in, and then we'll get this out so you can get the rest of your day. They said it, okay, the EIDL, I had said about the EIDL loan, and Pam had commented that it's only available for agriculture right now. I wasn't sure if that was the EIDL loan or just the emergency grant. They were giving grants up to $10,000. Yeah, right now, I know that for the grants, it's only, and I believe that you're right, you may be right about the rest of it for the agricultural businesses. I think that's gonna open up more though soon too for everybody else. So I would keep looking at that page and see as it's updated, because I think they're gonna let you do that. How do you convert mileage paid drivers to FTE, full-time equivalents, hourly, that the PPP forgiveness application requires? That is an awesome question and tells you everything about why nobody makes laws for trucking specifically, because we don't track their hours, right? We don't. Here's what and it's the same thing, by the way, with like if you have a 401k program, which I do recommend as a driver retention tool, but that's for another day. If you have a 401k, they require hours worked in a year for eligibility. What we have always done for our clients, and this goes back over a decade, is if the driver generally works full time for you and they moved and you pay them for any mileage, I count that as 40 hours or one full FTE. We all know that 40 hours times 52 weeks in a year is 2,080 hours. If you give them 2 weeks vacation, you've got 2,000 working hours. And you get that I'm rounding off and not counting holidays, but it gives you the idea. Every full-time driver works more than 2,000 hours in a week. They just do. So that's why I feel good about just calling it 40 hours. I've done it for 401k audits for the 5,500s at the end of the year. Nobody ever questions it. And if they started to question it, they'd give up because they'd be like, oh, okay, trucking's too hard for me. So yeah, that's what I would do. Hopefully that answers your question. Owner's wages capped at 8 weeks or 24 weeks. That is a great question that I want to make sure that I get right, but I'm thinking that that's going to roll with the regular wages at 24 weeks, that you can do it at 24 weeks. It's still going to be capped at 100,000 a year annualized, which was about 15,300 and change. At the 8 weeks, it'll be 45,900 or 46,000 for 24 weeks. You're not going to be able to pay yourself more. I mean, you're still going to be capped if the owner makes $100,000 a year or more. But yeah, that still counts as far as I know. As far as I've seen, I'm waiting for more guidance on that as well. The SBA hasn't put out a lot of guidance yet on the new program, but it's coming very soon. But I want to get this webinar out to people as quick as I could because I know that everybody wants to know what's going on, and I totally get that. On the forgiveness application, I think this is someone helping me with another question, which, by the way, that's awesome. I can't really go look on the internet for a couple of answers right now, so that I appreciate everybody doing this. It asks for the employee count and the date of the application of the loan. Okay, not on the February, maybe not on the February 15. All right, well that's good. And though I think what he's saying is keep your FTEs to where it was when you applied for the loan. Yeah, that'd be good too. Yeah, but well, I'll try and get clarification out for this, and I'll email it to everybody. But no, thanks, Derek. I appreciate you contributing that because again, I can't go looking for it right now. What if the owner isn't taking his pay right now or before as it wasn't working out for him? I'm going to assume wasn't working out for him is a financial possibility within your business. I think what I have seen on the original forgiveness app that's going to get updated when it was 8 weeks, it just asked for the total amount of owners paying the 8 weeks. It didn't ask for week by week by week or payroll by payroll by payroll. So if the owner didn't pay themselves to the 8th week in that example, and I'm going to make your owner get paid 100 grand a year. And then last week, 15,385, I think is the number. That's just what it would show in the total. So what I would suggest is if you need the money for the loan forgiveness, I'm making an assumption here that I'll share that the owner is the owner of the company completely, like 100% owner. There's no conflict. They don't have to talk to anybody else about doing anything. So let's say, and also in this example, and even if this isn't correct for this, it would work for where I'm going. The owner just doesn't have the money to pay themselves because trucking's incredibly hard and the rates went through the floor. Okay, all very reasonable possibilities. What I would do, and we helped the client do this, that was a small company, is they paid themselves the wage and then lent the net pay right back to the company as like a loan from the owner that you can just pay yourself back whenever you have the money. So that way you show the wage and it's legit. This is completely on the up and up. This isn't anything shady. You paid yourself the wage and you took taxes out like you would. You just lent the money right back to the company. That's what I would do to make sure you get your loan forgiven if you're short. Again, with 24 weeks, your loan forgiveness, you shouldn't have a problem getting your loan forgiven. But that's what I would do. I'm gonna give it like 30 more seconds for any other questions here. But I appreciate everybody's questions. I think we touched everybody's. If you have a question later, we're sending out the slides to everybody. I know this is not a great slide intensive webinar like some of the other ones that we've done, but it's got a lot of links on it. And so hopefully those will help you, and we'll send those out to everybody. So you'll have those, but if you have other questions later, reach out to us. We're here to help trucking families. That's our, if you ask anybody in our company what our mission, that's what they're supposed to tell you. So if you call us and ask and you don't get that answer, reach out to me, by the way. But we're here to help trucking families. That's why we're here. So if we can help you with a relative, especially a lot of these things are things that we're going to be able to just give you an answer, we're happy to do it. So with that, I think we're going to end this webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We're going to put a recording of this on our YouTube page, which I've listed on the bottom there. By the way, if you want to pay us for this webinar, but not money, because I'm not asking for money, just go subscribe to our YouTube page so I can turn that link into something better. We post everything there is helpful. Go check it out. It's also through our truckingpayroll.com/tips. It's on there too. But yeah, go subscribe to our YouTube page, please. That would be awesome of you. And thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day and a great weekend.